If you've ever had trouble dealing with tension in the center of the board, then this game from Logical Chess Move by Move is for you. We're going to see how, through the right captures, Black was able to put his opponent under an enormous amount of pressure, and then at the right moment, switch plans to launch a devastating kingside attack. Let's jump in. We get d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, knight bd2, c5, striking at white's center. This c5 advance is often necessary for black in the queen's pawn openings. e3 reinforces the center. We get b6, going for a queenside fianchetto. Bishop to d3 and bishop to b7. So these have all been pretty normal opening moves. White is playing a Collet system setup. So white is planning to castle kingside, which is what happened in the game, and eventually play the e4 advance. This odd-looking knight on d2, combined with the bishop on d3, both support the advance to e4. Black plays bishop to e7, just preparing to castle, and now we get the first opening inaccuracy. White plays c4. Now this is inconsistent with the Collet system setup. Usually, white reinforces the d-pawn with c3, so that in case black were to capture, you can recapture like this, keeping a strong pawn on d4, supported by c3, and then this dark squared bishop is going to be able to get into the game, thanks to the pawn being deflected from e3 over to d4, which we just saw with those captures. The thing about c4 is that the d4 pawn doesn't have quite as much defense on it, and we're going to see why this is important much later. Actually, here as well, white could have played e4 immediately. This is the pawn break that white should be aiming for in the Collet system, and right now there's no reason why white couldn't have done it. We've got the knight and the bishop attacking it from black, but we've got the knight and the bishop defending it from white. So the immediate e4 would have been better. If you're enjoying the video so far, by the way, do hit the subscribe button. I'll be continuing the series on Logical Chess Move by Move very soon, so by subscribing you won't miss out on any of the future videos. Let's go back to the game. We had c4 and black castles, just getting the king safe, and now white plays b3, continuing to be a bit inaccurate here. White is mixing up the two Collet system variations. There are two main variations in the Collet system. The one that white started off with was what they call the Collet-Koltanowski system, going for this e4 advance, and that's where you should probably have the pawn on c3. What white has done instead is mix it up with the Collet-Zukertort system by playing b3 and bishop to b2. But in that variation, the pawn should be back on c2. These are opening subtleties, but they do matter at this level, and these two players, Flohr in particular with the white pieces, were both strong masters. Flohr actually was considered for a long time to be a candidate to challenge for the World Championship title. Pitschak was not as well known, but we're going to see how black was able to get a victory over his much better known opponent. So we get b3, as I said, a bit inconsistent with the mainline theory, and now we get d5. And as I mentioned at the start, we've got a lot of central tension here. And every move you have to consider capturing. Like if you've got white here, you've got to consider capturing this way or capturing this way. Or if you do something else, then you've got to consider, well, what if black captures this way or captures this way? And really, you have to calculate this every single move. It makes it quite difficult because you're never able to leave this part of the board alone considering these captures until it's resolved one way or the other. Now the way that white plays it with queen to c2 has an idea in mind, and the idea is to play the e4 pawn advance. This is what white has been aiming for. He could have done it earlier, of course, as we showed, but at the moment black, through playing the move d5, is preventing the e4 pawn advance for the moment. So queen to c2 has the idea of renewing the ability to do it. We should just show what happens if you play e4 straight away. Well, black can just take it, and that's a fork of the knight and the bishop. So black wins material. So instead, what should have white done? Well, it's not easy. As I said, the central tension, you do have to calculate everything, and the consequences of getting it wrong are pretty dire. What white should have done here was to capture this way, and then after black recaptures, then you've opened up the diagonal for the dark squared bishop. This is the way that white should have played this. White should have given up on the idea of playing e4 and played in an alternative way. But the move queen to c2 is what was played, and let's see how black punished this. With a very simple move, actually. Sometimes simple is best. Knight to c6. The threat, well, there's a few threats, but one of them is to come into b4. And one thing in these queen's pawn openings is that white always wants to keep hold of this light squared bishop. This is white's best minor piece. So knight to c6 comes with the threat of playing knight to b4. And if knight to b4 were to be played now, let's just give black another move, well then clearly this light squared bishop is going to be lost, and this trade of the queenside knight of blacks for the light squared bishop is very bad from white's point of view. So white knew that they didn't want to allow this loss of the light squared bishop, and that's why white played a3 in order to prevent this. Now, if you're looking to improve your own chess and your own understanding of positional play, I help ambitious adults at the below 2000 ELO level improve their results in the game. So if you'd like to explore working together, improve your middle game understanding, click the link in the description below, and we can see if working together will be a good fit. But back to the game. a3 was very understandable from white's point of view because wanting to prevent knight to b4. But this is quite slow, and this is another concept that we're going to get to show here, that opening the center tends to favor the side with better development. And let's just take a moment to look at the relative development of both sides. Okay, both sides have got their king safe, so that's the same. But I think it's pretty clear to see that black's development of the minor pieces is better than white's here. All of black's minor pieces are off their starting squares, and none of them are really getting in the way of each other. Whereas for white, the bishop is still on its starting square. This knight on d2 is a bit awkward because white hasn't been able to play e4 like he was planning to. So we've got black with better development, and that's why black chose to open up the center, starting with c takes d4. Now, white takes back this way. Let's just show what happens if white were to capture here. Well, the thing is that black can capture again, and white really has to take back with the queen here. Has to take back with the queen, because if you take back with the pawn, then there's two attackers on this pawn and only one white defender. So black could simply capture that pawn and be a pawn up. So you'd have to take with the queen, but this gets very uncomfortable very quickly, and we can see why opening the center favors the side with better development. Simply rook to c8, and now this queen is very nervous on the same file as the black rook. I don't think you even need to calculate too much more here to see that this is bad news for white. Just to show an alternative capture, if we had seen instead the knight take, then actually a pretty similar thing. This time black takes with the knight, take back, take again here, and once again white has to take with the queen in order to defend this pawn. If you don't, if you take with the knight instead, then simply queen takes here, and black has won a pawn. And winning a pawn is a big deal at this level. So, back to the game. We saw white take back instead on d5, and now black takes back with the queen. Now this may seem to go against a principle that you've heard before, that you shouldn't bring your queen out too early, but these principles can be broken if concretely there's no way for your opponent to take advantage of it. I mean, okay, a concept like don't bring out the queen too early, that might be true in general, but you always have to test it specifically in this particular case. Does it matter? I mean, maybe white could attack the queen this way, but then it swings over to the Kingside, and well, black is starting to get some activity going. So no problem bringing out the queen because white isn't really able to take advantage of it. So what we got instead was white playing e takes d4. Now this is an isolated pawn, which can be weak in an endgame, but black wasn't interested in an endgame. Black was wanting to finish this off immediately, and there's an immediate tactic here actually. Pause the video if you need to spot it. It's not a tactic to win a vast amount of material, but a lot of chess and a lot of chess tactics are about pattern recognition. So if you can notice the pattern of the queen and the bishop lined up towards the white king, well, that's a big clue. Black played knight takes d4 here. The point is that you can't take back with the knight because that's checkmate. That's what I mean by this pattern, right? You've got to be able to see this stuff not just when it's immediately there, but also the prospect of it being there. So in a position like this one, you can see the potential of having this this pattern arise by moving the knight out of the way and winning a pawn in the meantime. So white can't take back, and black is a pawn up, which is already a huge advantage, as you can see from the engine evaluation. It's already +3 in black's favour. But it's not just because of the pawn, it's also because of the activity advantage that black's got here. So the white queen has to move back. It was being attacked before, and we get to see more pressure being applied here. The threat, just to show, if black were given another move, is to capture here, and then after white takes back, winning a piece. That's thanks to this rook move, adding an extra piece to pressure along the d file. Back to the game. We saw white instead play knight to e1. Now this knight is defending the bishop, which, as we saw, had some problems with it, with the queen and the rook on the same file. And it also holds on to the g2 square, so the checkmate threat is controlled by the knight. But we can see how white's pieces are going backwards. And this is often the first stage of launching an attack. Make your opponent's pieces go back onto more passive squares. And definitely this is the case here. I mean, look how many of white's pieces are on the back rank now. And this knight isn't great either. Probably the only piece which is okay is this light squared bishop. But everything else, we can see how white is going backwards in terms of development. Whereas black keeps on applying pressure. This is a switch of plans, which I outlined at the start. So now, rather than trying to win material on the d file, black is going for a kingside attack. So what's the threat right now? It's to pressurize the h2 pawn. We're going to see the next few moves from black do this, and because all of white's pieces are so passive, this is pretty hard to stop. This knight could go back here, but if it does, then this knight stands ready to take it. So white tries to develop, finally, the bishop to the fianchetto position, which is why he played b3 many moves ago. And finally he gets to do it, getting a piece off the back rank. But now we see the pressure come to h2. And this is forcing white into moving a pawn in front of his king. This is often the second stage in launching a successful attack. This pawn formation of 3 pawns in front of the king is the best defensive setup. We've seen a few examples of this in earlier games in this logical chess move by move series. But if you can get one of these pawns to move forward, then that weakens the pawn structure and creates new squares to take advantage of. So we get g3. There wasn't really a lot of choice there because the h2 pawn was under attack. So now we get another threat against h2, this time with the knight. And that gets white to play the pawn to h4. So we've seen 2 weakening pawn moves from white. From just 2 moves ago, we had the ideal pawn formation, and then just 2 moves later with these threats, first bishop to d6, and then knight to g4. Both the g pawn and the h pawn have been provoked forward. And if you haven't seen this game, it is well worth pausing here to see what the finish is for black. There was actually only one more move in the game before white resigned. Can you spot it? Pause the video now and I'll reveal the answer. Hope you've had a chance to have a go at this. Well, it is a forcing move. You always need to look at the forcing moves first, especially when you've got an attack as attractive as this one. And the move here is queen takes h4. That provoked the resignation. The point behind this queen sacrifice is that if it's accepted, then black gets checkmate via a bishop check, or a bishop checkmate in this case. And that was the end of the game, and a brilliant victory there for black over his much more renowned opponent. If you enjoyed this video on logical chess move by move, click here to check out the next game in the series. Every game in this classic text will help build your understanding of chess and help you win more games.